paragraphs. If we say typically, a paragraph is about 10 to 15 lines, no, 10 to, yeah, like 12 lines long. So it's about 10 to 12 lines long. That's the first thing. So you can kind of count the lines. But the other thing, which is perhaps more important, is that a paragraph contains really only one idea. So when we were talking about paragraphs, and we said, oh yeah, they start with a sentence, which is a topic sentence. They start with the sort of main idea. Then maybe there's an example. Maybe there's a problem. Then maybe there's a solution. And if you had an example, then you explain the example. And then you say what the example means to you, or how the solution helps your argument, and then you link to the next paragraph, then that will be the thing. So paragraphs are not long. That is the first thing. So if you've got a paragraph of more than 15 lines, my advice would be take a look at the paragraph and decide, probably in your group, but decide where, what the point of the paragraph is. What are you trying to say? What is your idea? And when you can see that the idea has changed, then it's time to start a new paragraph. That's it. Paragraphs in that sense are very simple. And in Dawn's work, in her group's work, the paragraphs are very long. I mean, when I looked at them, because I have my rule of thumb of like 12, maybe 15 lines, but about 12 lines, I thought, yes, that paragraph that I'm looking at, which is nearly a page long, is probably 2. You see what I mean? So you can do the same when you're checking your own work. If you've been writing enthusiastically and writing a lot, then maybe you haven't seen just how long your paragraph was. So to about 12 lines, you should be looking to see whether the idea has changed. So that's my first little piece of advice. But other than that, I think it would be nice if we took a look at the tests that I have prepared. And by that, I mean, we look at the tests, and it would be nice if people were able to answer the questions. And of course, you can answer the questions in the chat, but I would prefer to speak to you for 2 reasons. I think speaking is good practice for the exam. Yeah, that's right. It's good practice for the exam, because of course you're going to have to, in the exam, explain yourself. So what do I mean? Well, I'll just write that down. Exam practice. So the exam practice basically is explaining things. So when it comes to your exam, you will first of all have to speak. Second of all, you will have to answer the questions that you get, and you will have to answer them, what should we say, fluently. spontaneously. So I'm thinking that today a good way of reviewing what we have said so far is to take some of those tests, and I'll ask the questions, and the questions are not difficult. So you should all be able to answer, and we get a little bit of a vibe going. We get a little bit of speed going. I don't really want to have to wait too long for answers. On the other hand, I'm not going to answer my own questions. You are going to answer the questions. So really, I think we could take a look at the coding test. And in the coding test, there were 7 questions. And the first question was, does coding help your group? So what would the answer be there? Yes, it does in some way. You are now muted. Okay. As an exam answer, that's dangerous. And it's dangerous because when you answer, yes, it does in some ways, my first reaction is to write this. And that's what I would say too. So if you say, yes, it helps, Kang's answer, yes, it helps our group to classify something in a topic, I think that's better. So that's a better answer. Okay, so this is why we're doing it. We're practicing now for the exam, mainly because most people are well underway with their writing. So if we think about the yeah, and then Kang, another good answer there, also to create a database. The thing that's missing from this answer is that you've missed the idea of defining criteria. So how did you decide which things were important, which things were not so important, or which things were about BIM and which things were about sustainability, you know? So when I ask a question like, does coding help your group? Actually, I'm looking for the answer. It's got something to do with sorting out our data and creating a database. Yes, I am. But I'm also looking for, how did you sort the data? And that would be, the answer to that would be, it helped us, but because we defined some criteria for which categories we put things in. Okay, so this is why we're taking the questionnaire tests now, and I'm going through them with you because I want to prepare you for the exam. So the next question: does your group need to provide evidence of coding in your final piece of work? Yes, it'd be nice to have some sort of example. And also, it would be very nice if we had your coding process or your some sort of evidence of what you did. If you remember when I showed you the PowerPoint, there were lots and lots of post-its, and somebody had written down names of books and articles on post-its, and then they had sorted the post-its into different categories, and they took a photograph. Yeah, well, something, yeah, for example, photos of the process would appear in the appendix. So this is where you would use an appendix, and of course the appendices have numbers. So if you've got more than one, then there's appendix 1, appendix 2, etc. But you need to provide evidence that you have done this. In other words, you can't just write in your assignment, oh yeah, we did this, because then I have no evidence. And if I, as an examiner, if I want to check your process, then I need to be able to see evidence of your process. And with no appendix, no evidence in the appendix, then I have no way of checking, which makes my life difficult as an examiner. And consequently makes your life difficult because you get questions that you don't want in the exam. So this is an important issue. You know, it's not the questions in my tests are not there just because you know, just for fun, and they're also important because they give you some way of preparing yourself for your exam. So, how do you do coding? That would be a question, might be a question in the exam. Who knows? You never know. Questions in the exam vary according to your piece of written work, so might be there, might not, but how do you do coding? Yeah, okay, different group, different online sources according to the subject terms. Yes, I'm hesitating because the answer that you give does sound a little bit like doing a literature search, but the answer is okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. So, so that would be a possible answer as well. Okay, what about this one? Should we make a database of useful quotes, useful citations? I remember we had a question about that last time, and it seemed as if you didn't know the word quotes, but preferred to use quotations. And Truck has answered, yes, we do. And I agree with you, Truck. Yes, we do. So we do need to make a list of useful quotations, get our little database going inside Word or in Mendeley. And why would we do this? So that's my next question. Why would you make a database of useful quotations? And the answer is for fourth semester, and maybe fifth, and maybe sixth, and maybe seventh. Because if you end up working with the same sorts of topics, the same sorts of themes as you move through the semesters, then of course you are going to need these handy quotations. And if you are quoting the giants, the great men who have published good quality research in an area of interest, you might easily want to use the database so that in fifth semester you don't have to read all the same stuff again. You can just call on your quotation. So doing a little bit of work now, which might feel like extra work in a way, reduces the amount of work you have to do later. And as you go up through the semesters, everything gets more demanding, more difficult. So it's a good idea to do the donkey work, we call it in English. It's a good idea to do the hard work now, so that you can kind of enjoy the work later. So that would be one thing. And this was my last question in this one. So let me just put it in the chat. Oh, there's a spelling error there. It should say keep our. It should be our, not on. Where should we keep our database of quotations? Yeah, in Word. And the reason that you keep it in Word, which is a good place to keep it, is that that's usually the word, the program you're working in, so it's easiest to have it there. So that was the coding test, and we have one or two other tests which we can take a look at. So here's one, new topic now. And I've got a statement here. The theory you use is one you make up yourselves on the basis of what you believe to be true. So the answer to that is either yes or no. So somebody can give me an answer to that. Or maybe not. Ah, there's Tran. So, okay, Tran's answer is an interesting one, which would be quite nice in an exam, because I would be able to ask more about that, about the researching for the phenomenon. My answer is very pragmatic. There isn't really a theory section in the third semester because you don't have a theory as such. Actually, what you have is an analytic attitude. And when you have an analytic attitude, that's when we start to do things like talk about top down and bottom up and empirical data and what you do with it and whether you have a hypothesis and things like that, which we will talk about. I don't know when, but a little bit later in this lesson. So the thing is that when you think about the theory section in third semester, you don't really have one. You can have a section heading in your writing, which is called theory, that's fine, but you probably will not mention a theory. So it's not like you're going to write in your theory section, we are pragmatic empiricists or something, because, well, to be honest, you don't know what they are. But you do know how to do analysis, and therefore you write about your analytic attitude. So that's the answer to that one. Let me just have a look here. So this was one of my questions. Control C, put it in there. Oh, wait a minute. What happened there? That's very odd. Just a second. Try again. So what about this statement? The mind map is not helpful. We are doing it because our teacher says so. Is that true or not? No, it's not true. So that's right. But why is it not true? What was the function of the mind map? This is something that you might easily get as a question in your exam. Right, okay, I think all of those answers are good answers. And in the end, all of them can be summed up by this. It helps you find the logical connections between your ideas in a group. I think that's the important thing, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it helps you talk and it helps you map out some sort of progress, and it helps you organize, and it helps you sketch out your content in your essay. All of these answers are good answers. And we can sum up by saying it helps the group find logical connections between their different aspects, their different topics in what they're writing. So there's the answer to that question. So that's nice. A minute. What do I go to here? Oh, wait a minute. What have I done wrong? And there were one or two other tests that we had. And oh, we've just taken a look at that one. Sorry. Wait a minute. Okay. So, this is some. These are some writing questions that I'm looking at now. The good writing thing test, and this is my first question in that one. You've been trying to do academic writing, but what is it? What is it that you do when you do academic writing? Okay, got one or two answers coming in. Or maybe not. I can see people are typing, I just can't see what they're typing. Okay, maybe you're typing to each other. I don't know. I'm going to give. Oh, hang on a minute. There's an answer. Maybe. Koa's answer, I think, is actually better than mine. My answer looks like that. You try to explain complex ideas simply. Koa's answer is more detailed than mine. So maybe we could synthesize those two answers. But this is the way that exam questions would go. So I think it's important that you try to answer some of the questions. I notice that there are some people who are engaged here and are trying to answer, but I've only got about 4 or 5 names in the list. It would be nice if everybody was trying to answer. Because it gives us more to talk about in the end. As in what's a good answer and what's a bad answer. So why do you use smart art? In a way, we've already organized. We've already talked about this, but I think it's a good reminder. That is to say, if you haven't used smart art in your writing, in your assignment, in your task, I think it's a good idea to do so. I would recommend it warmly. But why do you do it? Just because I say so doesn't mean it's a good thing. It might mean that I just like pretty pictures. So why do you use smart art? Yes, I guess you're right, Truck, to visualize the ideas. And that's very good because the visualization, it works for the writer and the reader. And I think that that's the important thing to remember about what you're doing, kind of on a piece of paper, if you like. You're not writing that piece of paper for yourself. You're not even writing it for an exam. You're actually writing it for a reader. You're writing so that someone else, in this case me, but someone else that you don't know, that you have never met, you're writing for this anonymous person who has to be able to understand your ideas in the same way that you understand them. So, of course, writing about your ideas is a good thing, but visualizing them and then writing about them is probably a better thing. So, yeah, and creative design and quality illustration, yes, that's nice as well. That is to say, it's nice to see them because, but it's the visualization thing that's the key, and also when you when you in your group visualize a problem, let's say, and you think, there are three sides to this problem, and we can think of this problem as a triangle with three sides. That helps you and your thinking, but as I say, it also helps the reader follow your thinking. So using a bit of smart art in your written work, if you haven't already done so, is a good idea, and a quick reminder there that you haven't handed in yet, so there's still time to put some smart art into your work. And another quick point is that if you put an illustration into your work, it doesn't count as characters. Of course, you put an illustration in and then you write about it, that counts as characters. But if you put an illustration in, I think it counts only as 5 characters. So, of course, when we say a picture speaks 1,000 words, it is also a good way of explaining things to the reader, but not writing a lot. So I think those are a couple of things there that recommend using smart art. Um, so let's just take a look at this question. This is a little bit more difficult as a question, but there are basically 4 steps. You could argue there were more, but there are basically 4 steps when you're writing an introduction. So I would like to see some of those steps, please. Like any of the steps. Yeah, okay, introduce problems. and present problems that are related to them. That is part of the introduction. A problem formulation question would be a very important part, that's right. Those are the things you do normally. And we can see that you framed the problem in general. This is what you did when I gave you your template. Then you focused on a particular aspect, told me the purpose of your writing. You told me then a roadmap, so that you say, first we look at this, second we look at that. And then you asked the question, the problem formulation that Khan mentions. You ask the question, which has no obvious answer. And of course, that's always the what should we say? That's the best sort of problem formulation is the one that doesn't have an obvious answer. As we know, if it has an obvious answer, there's not much point in asking it. So, so those are some good points there that we have thought about. And then we talked last time about this, so I'd like to see whether anybody has an answer to this question. Once you leave the introduction, the elements in the paragraph change. To which order? Well, if we look at the question that I first asked a moment ago, where we had to write an introduction, and my answer 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry. If I give you the answer, then maybe you'll understand the question. But we don't use the same pattern. The way as I was trying to explain in the last presentation, in the last lesson, the pattern, the sentences and their function changes. So we end up with something that looks like that, so that you have a claim, you have maybe a problem, or you might have a solution. Then you have some sort of example and some sort of consequence and some sort of link. So when you're looking at your own work, the question is always, what is the function of this sentence? What am I trying to do with it? Am I illustrating something? Am I explaining something? So rather than just writing down lots of words, you actually look at the words and you think, okay, each one of these sentences is like a building block. And therefore I have to have certain building blocks in my paragraph to make it a good paragraph, to make it a strong paragraph that supports my argument. So typically, and not always, but typically you would have a structure which looked a bit like that. Some sort of claim, some sort of problem, maybe an example, maybe a citation after the example, and then somehow you explain the consequence. What does this example mean for your particular argument? And then you link to the next paragraph. And that's what we talked about last time. So the PowerPoints for last time are on Canvas if you're not sure about what I'm talking about. So I'm now looking at the keywords to include test. And just a second. Oh, crikey, I didn't mean to do that. Wait a minute. Clicked on the wrong thing. Sorry. There we are. I'm looking at the test which is called keywords to include. And I think that you should all take that test now. And then we will just go over your answers. So I'm going to switch my microphone off for 15 minutes. And then you have peace and quiet to answer the test, which is called keywords to include.